It's Thursday, June 30th, and this is now on HNN.
To be part of these discussions so that the Navy does show us that they want to be transparent and accountable.
Deadline day for the Navy's plan on how it intends to safely defuel the Red Hill fuel tanks.
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear.
Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is sworn in as the nation's first Black woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm Natalie Brand with the history made and a preview of next term.
When my call for unity started to resonate with you, it did so because it echoed your yearnings.
The new president of the Philippines praises his dictator father during his inauguration address.
Oh, come on.
These stories, plus Julia Roberts and George Clooney reunite in the new film Ticket to Paradise. Details coming up on This Is Now.
Getting started with this, the Navy's plan on how it intends to deal with the Red Hill fuel tanks is due today, and critics are worried about more delays.
Now the deadline comes as the Navy has still not released its internal investigation and supplemental report on the contamination, and that was due back in January.
The Department of Health has said this is a ticking time bomb that threatens our principal drinking water supply. Our concern is that the plan today will be based on a contractor's assessment that was contracted back in January, before the Pentagon conceded that this is needs to be shut down. This Red Hill needs to be shut down, and that contractor was looking not just at defueling but at continued operations. So they may have been taking a very narrow look at what kinds of options are available. We really need them to look at the full range of options, to think creatively. Because we really can't afford to have 2 more years to have our water supply at risk.
Now that was Sierra Club of Hawaii director Wayne Tanaka talking to our news crew this morning. Many are still in awe that the Navy bowed to public pressure in deciding to drain millions of gallons of fuel from the Red Hill fuel tanks. Now the Navy's contractors report showed Red Hill needed about 200 repairs for safe defueling. Hawaii's congressional members say it could take at least 2 years and $100 million before defueling can begin. We have several HNN resources working on this story right now as we speak, and we'll have an update for you coming up on later editions of Hawaii News Now.
Taking you live now to the nation's capital. A lot of news coming out of D.C. today. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson making history as the first Black woman to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. She took her oath just hours ago. We got Natalie Brand with the very latest.
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear.
It's a ceremony that makes history as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson becomes the first Black woman to sit on the nation's highest court.
So help me God.
Her official swearing in comes as Justice Stephen Breyer retires following the current term's close, nearly 3 months since her Senate confirmation.
In my family, it took just 1 generation to go from segregation to the Supreme Court of the United States.
While Justice Jackson will not change the ideological makeup of the 6'3" conservative-leaning court, Dean of Howard University School of Law Danielle Holly Walker says she will have a significant impact with her background and experience as a woman of color, a mother, and former federal public defender.
I think Justice Jackson will be similar to other justices who have been labeled as kind of the conscience of the Supreme Court. And when I say the conscience of the court, I mean someone who really talks about the everyday person.
Justice Jackson steps into the role after a highly contentious term that's divided justices on issues including abortion, climate change, and religion.
This term has been probably one of the most heavily controversial, politicized terms ever in the history of the court, and we can expect more of that to come.
I am pleased to welcome Justice Jackson to the court and to our common calling.
In its next term, the court is expected to decide on more contentious issues, including voting rights, LGBTQ rights, and affirmative action. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
Maui police are investigating a shooting in Kihei. Dylan Ancheta joins us with those details.
The shooting took place on Maui Veterans Highway. Here's what we know so far. First responders were called to an area near Hanson Road, just north of Kihei, around 6:30 p.m. MPD says a male victim was driving southbound on the highway when he was shot, but it's not exactly known where the bullet came from. The car then stopped on the side of the road near the entrance of the wildlife refuge. We spoke with a witness who drove up to the scene moments after it happened.
And I noticed the gentleman's door was open and he was slouched in his driver's seat. I noticed there was someone in the vehicle with him. I want to say it was his family. Looks like they're probably trying to help him.
We don't know the condition of the victim at this time, but Maui police tell us there is no threat to the public, but they also haven't said if a suspect has been arrested. We'll keep you updated as we get more information on this story. For This Is Now, I'm Dylan Ancheta.
Now, the NATO summit in Madrid has wrapped up. For more on that, let's bring in Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent, John Decker, who's on the ground there. Now, John, what were some of the key takeaways and accomplishments from the summit?
This was a very consequential NATO summit, perhaps the most consequential summit since the Cold War. Why is that? The NATO Rapid Reaction Force has increased based upon these 2 days of meetings from 40,000 to 300,000. The U.S. also announcing, President Biden announcing, the establishment of a permanent base in Poland. That's unbelievable news. And of course, the news that NATO has invited 2 new members, Sweden and Finland, to join the military alliance. So a lot of news coming out of Madrid this week.
And President Biden and NATO are, touting this strengthened alliance. Have we seen a response on that from Russian President Vladimir Putin?
We have. Today he had a press conference and was asked about it, and a mixed reaction coming from Vladimir Putin. Why is that? He first said that he has no problem. He said Sweden and Finland can do what they want. They can join whatever alliance they want. But at the same time, he said there will be consequences for both countries if NATO infrastructure is established on the territory, the sovereign territory of either of those countries. In addition to that, the foreign minister for Russia called these moves this weekend destabilizing for Europe. So that is the immediate reaction that we got from Russia with the news that was conveyed not only by President Biden, but also by NATO's Secretary General.
And what about any reaction from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky?
I think he's disappointed. He's disappointed that an invitation wasn't extended to Ukraine to join NATO, but I think he honestly knows that was never really in the cards. Their application, so to speak, their effort to join NATO has languished for literally years, and I think he knew deep down that it wouldn't happen during this meeting. That being said, a lot was pledged to help out Ukraine in its fight against Russia. The UK, for instance, pledged $1.2 billion in military equipment. President Biden offering $1.2 billion in economic aid, and pretty much every part of the military equipment that President Zelensky had requested has indeed been pledged by NATO to help in their fight against Russia.
All right, switching gears, President Biden making headlines here at home, saying he would support an exception to the Senate's filibuster rules to help codify Roe versus Wade. What are the chances of that happening?
The chances are zero, Ashley. Sometimes I think President Biden thinks he's still in the Senate. The Senate does its own thing. And right now, as you know, it's a 50-50 Senate. In order to get what President Biden wants, you need every Democrat to approve the idea of changing the Senate rules. And right now, 2 Democrats in the Senate are against that. They've been firmly against it, and I don't see them changing their minds. Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. And as long as you have those 2 Democrats opposed to that Senate move that President Biden wants, the president will not get his way on this front.
All right, joining us from Madrid, Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent John Decker. Safe travels home, John.
Ipapatupad ang mga batas nito.
Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the namesake son of the ousted dictator, was sworn in as president of the Philippines in Manila on Thursday. Marcos Jr., known as Bongbong, succeeds Rodrigo Duterte as the country's 17th president.
If we but focus on the work at hand and the work that will come to hand, we will go very far.
His rise to power more than 30 years after the People Power revolt booted his father. Back then, the family landed in exile on Oahu.
The situation will develop.
Marcos Sr.'s rule from 1965 to 1986 was marked by human rights abuses, widespread corruption, and plunder of the country's treasury.
Deliver the biggest electoral mandate in the history of Philippine democracy.
Marcos won the election with 31.6 million votes, or 59% of the ballots cast. At his swearing-in, Marcos Jr. thanked his mother, the 92-year-old former First Lady Imelda, who attended the ceremony. He also praised his father in the speech.
You, the people, have spoken, and it is resounding. When my call for unity started to resonate with you, it did so because it echoed your yearnings, mirrored your sentiments, and expressed your hopes for family, for country, and for a better future.
We're starting a new series on the challenges for Hawaii families dealing with chronic illnesses. Loved ones often have to give up their jobs and life savings. Our Sammy Solina goes in depth on those struggling with Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as ALS.
ALS is a progressive disease that often renders people incapable of moving, eventually making them a prisoner inside their own bodies. These families I spoke with have been taking care of loved ones for years, but say it can be too much at times to do it all on their own. That's why they're fighting for a small, long-term care facility just for people with ALS.
When it comes to Filipino food,
adobo fried rice,
Divina Robillard serves it up with love. So she might have taken offense by her husband's favorite food.
hot dogs. You wanted a hot dog.
But good thing, she is even more passionate about her love for him than the food she
Oh,
makes.
yes, that's another thing that's really frustrating for somebody who couldn't eat, is that he loved to eat. His illness really just progressed. He lost his ability to speak. Imagine that kind of restriction on a person who is very articulate and very socially engaged.
They had been married just 2 years when Britt started showing symptoms of ALS.
Because I was 29 when I got married. At 31, he was diagnosed.
Despite Britt's inability to move, he kept working as a sociology professor at UH. He wrote several books on being disabled. She helped him do it as his full-time caregiver.
Chest percussions, cleaning and setting up. There's so many things that we need to do in home care. He just aged naturally until his passing in 6 years ago.
While he was sick, a college friend of his called to reconnect. Divina told him about the disease. The now .com millionaire friend renovated their home. They had it better than most.
The biggest thing that we have made a change of in the house is the ceiling lift.
Divina still brought him to work every day and took care of their young son, born after Britt was diagnosed. They had a rhythm to their lives until it skipped a beat.
I had breast cancer when my son was 10 years old. And during that time, I did not know how to take care of myself. I always had that in mind. What is going to happen to me and Britt?
That's why she's advocating for a full-time ALS care facility.
This is not the kind of facility that will create just vegetables of them.
She's now a 22-year breast cancer survivor, running the ALS Foundation of Hawaii.
Has its own set of challenges. Absolutely.
Catherine O'Connor helped Divina start the foundation to advocate for the facility.
He had the biggest smile. Matter of fact.
Hi, Brian. We did a story with Catherine and her little brother, Brian Burke, a decade ago about their problems with Medicaid. This was taken before ALS prevented him from keeping up with his own moving business.
What are you doing today?
He found himself homeless after he couldn't physically do the job until his big sister got him into a care facility.
Big teddy bear. He had a heart of gold. I feel that with an ALS residence, he would still be alive because, you know, certain things that happened would not have happened.
Catherine visited Brian at the general care facility daily, but Brian developed bed sores, had a hard time getting medical care, and was usually uncomfortable until she arrived.
I think what was the most difficult for me was knowing, seeing his quality of life or lack thereof, and knowing that there was something better out there that was not available for him here and for other ALS patients here.
It has come together before. There's a facility in Massachusetts that focuses on ALS.
Do you take cream?
Catherine and Davina have tried to get the ball rolling for a specialized facility here. They've had preliminary conversations with St. Francis Healthcare System. Those folks told me they would love to help, but it would take a combination of federal, legislative, and nonprofit support. They would need extra staff, which is a hard ask nowadays. For Davina and Catherine, the wish for a place for their family members has been replaced by a dream for others.
The hope was that maybe he could be our first resident, but it's taking us longer to get off the ground, and he didn't last long enough. But it can help many other families.
I know that having an ALS care facility will allow families like us to be provided with the care that we need over time.
In the coming days, we'll also introduce you to patients and their loved ones who are fighting to improve care for those who are chronically ill.
So much things I wish I could have done with him.
We'll show you how families struggle to fill the gaps in the healthcare and social service systems meant to help them.
ALS is a rare disease. Only about 5 people in a group of 100,000 will develop it. But to many families in Hawaii dealing with other illnesses, what patients with ALS are grappling with is familiar. The same healthcare and long-term care hurdles. Tomorrow, we take a closer look at what those are. Sammy Solina, Hawaii News Now.
Everyone is anticipating the return of Japanese visitors, and this week we have a flight coming in from ANA tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll be following that, but Billy V is joining us because he did it in reverse. He's actually one of the first, or some of the first, American visitors to visit Japan since they were in lockdown now for years because of the pandemic. I wanted to bring him on to This Is Now to ask him what that experience was like. Hey, Billy, how was it?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Actually, it was a wonderful experience in Japan. First of all, just to kind of make sure that, to kind of describe this correctly, I was able to get into Japan because my family is in Japan, my mother-in-law, and she has not been feeling well, so we wanted to go over and spend some time with her, but also to see my son and my wife. So we had a wonderful time. The plane getting into Tokyo, and once you get into the airport, usually you would have to wait. In the past, you've had to wait some 5 hours, 3 hours to get into the terminal. Took us 2 hours to get in, so we were kind of okay with that. Kind of getting in, mostly it was just the waiting part. There were so many flights that were trying to get in at one time, but everybody's kind of got to go through one single file line to get your, make sure that you've got all the vaccinations and your passport and customs and everything. Everybody was wearing masks in Japan, let me tell you. So it didn't feel any different than when we were at home. There are a few people that didn't. You don't have to when you're outside, but most people did. Most people over there were also courteous, but also if you came close and you didn't have a mask on, you felt something because everybody would be kind of looking at you. And then coming back into Hawaii, basically you got off the plane, you have to wait a little bit to get through customs, and you get right off the plane into the regular traffic flow and out of the airport.
Well, Billy, I know you have to be part of a tour package group right now to get into Japan. I want to talk about that and just a little bit more about those protocols for COVID right now that you have to do to get in.
Well, things are continuing to change, Jonathan. Like I mentioned before, you had to test on the ground. Once the plane stopped, you got off the plane, you'd have to get a test, you'd have to get the results before you could even get anywhere near your baggage or luggage to get out of the terminal. Now, you don't have to do that. You got to make sure that you have your card with you, your vaccination card, and you've gotten all of the boosters and everything, you had to check in with an app that they made you download onto your phone, and you have to have it operating the whole time that you were there so they could check in with you. I had to check in the first couple of days, but then after that, I never heard from them.
All right, Billy, thank you for that update. I'm glad to hear you had a good trip, and I hope your family's doing well there. But I know you're playing double role today, filling in for Guy Hoggy, doing the weather. Can you tell us what the next 7 days are going to be like here at home?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay, we'll start with today. It's going to be partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies. A few windward and mountain showers drifting leeward at times. Not a whole lot of moisture out there. It's a lot of trade winds blowing, gusty. That keeps the humidity down. So you take today and you go and copy and paste that onto tomorrow and Saturday. Sunday, we're going to have an upper level trough that's going to come through and bring us some moisture. So that will bring the windward and mountain showers over to the leeward sides at times. After we get past Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is more of a drier trend, but the trade wind's still with us. Even though we get those winds on those rains on Sunday, the wind keeps up consistently enough where those rains are always on the move, so it's never concentrated heavily in one place. Basically, next 7 days, it's going to be nice. Just make sure you're hydrated and bring out the sunscreen. Jonathan, more with This Is Now.
All right, let's see what the internet is talking about today. And there is this really wild story trending right now. So Star Wars fans aboard Disney's newest cruise ship need more than the Force to get their hands on the new Star Wars themed cocktail. They'll need cold hard cash. Okay, so we got an artist rendering here, I believe, right here of what we're talking about. This is the new Star Wars hyperspace lounge aboard the Disney Wish ship. According to several reports, the lounge features the most expensive drink in the entire galaxy. That's really wild. It's a cocktail called the Kyber Crystal, and it cost $5,000.
Wow.
Yep. It reportedly comes in a case that automatically opens to reveal a glowing cocktail with some smoke flowing out of it. I don't know if I would do that, but it looks really cool. The lounge looks amazing.
Well, 2 A-list Hollywood stars are teaming up on screen for the 5th time. Now, David Daniel has that and more in today's Good News Now.
Oh, come on.
You've got to be kidding me.
Excuse me, ma'am. I need to sit somewhere else. We used to be married.
Worst 19 years of my life.
We were only married for 5.
I'm counting the recovery.
Here's your first look at Julia Roberts and George Clooney in Ticket to Paradise, as bitter exes forced to work together to stop their daughter from making what they think is the same mistake they made 25 years ago. The romantic comedy arrives in theaters October 21st.
Peanut? Oh, yes, please.
Peanut.
As Minions: The Rise of Gru, the 5th Minions movie, prepares to take off in theaters, star Steve Carell recalls his reaction to the first film, Despicable Me, back in 2010.
You never know. You do the voice, the animators take it, the directors take it, and turn it into this unbelievable thing. And I remember thinking, it's not condescending to kids. It's smart, and there's a little bit of an edge to it. There's a little bit of sophistication to it that doesn't feel like a kid's movie.
In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is gonna do it for This Is Now. We're almost to Friday, a holiday weekend. We'll have all the news coming up for you at 1st at 4 on KHNL.